Better You. I'm your host, Cynthia Thompson. I'm so glad you're joining me today because we have a very special guest and we have a very important topic we're going to discuss tonight. I know every now and then we all wake up down in the dumps and they call it the blues, but sometimes the blues can get a little serious and you need some help. My guest today is going to explain to us all about that. But before we get started talking about our topic, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Natalie Murray, and I'm a licensed professional counselor in private practice here in Charlotte. The name of my practice is Charlotte Wellbeing Institute. I want everybody to come in and become educated about any mental health challenges they may have, and also just to make sure they're receiving the therapy and education that they need.
So, Natalie, the number one question that I have is, how do you know you're even depressed? Like, you may be like down in the dumps, just kind of sad. How do you know when you're full-blown depressed?
So there are different types of depression, which I will get into a little bit later.
Okay.
But most of the time when you are feeling depressed, like you said, you have a feeling of being down in the dumps. For a lot of people, it's also the mental fatigue of being able to get things done. So some people will say, oh, I'm just sad, or I feel indifferent today. But when people are clinically depressed, it takes a lot of mental energy just to get up and go to the restroom, to take a shower, to make phone calls, to do some of the basic activities that they do every day.
So you mentioned some of the symptoms or some of the things you should look for. What are some other physical symptoms that people experience when they're depressed?
So a lot of people either overeat or they don't eat at all. They sleep too much or they sleep too little. It becomes being able to take care of basic hygiene becomes an issue. A lot of people who are depressed are very irritable and on edge. And depression and anxiety can sometimes go hand in hand. They may have headaches, stomach aches. It may feel to them like it came out of nowhere. And they just woke up and all of a sudden they feel, like some people will say, they just feel off. A lot of times it could be a dry mouth.
Really?
Yes, a lot of people with depression have a dry mouth. They feel like they can never get enough water. And sometimes it's because they're not eating. So they're not hydrating their bodies properly. But those are some of the physical symptoms of depression.
So, I hate to jump ahead, but I know adults are depressed from time to time. Is this the same for children and teenagers? Do they have the same symptoms?
Yes, so children and teenagers definitely get depressed. With children, parents sometimes will write that off as, oh, they're just sad, they're upset about something, or they'll get over it, or they were in their room for an hour, but now they're running and playing, so they must be fine. With teenagers, it can be a little more evident that something is wrong. Grades may suffer. Things they used to do, like talk to their friends or play video games, they no longer have any interest in doing. They seem to a parent to just be checked out a little bit. And sometimes parents will say, okay, well, maybe they're just having a hard time at school, or maybe, you know, academically they're suffering, or, you know, maybe they don't like their teacher, or, you know, a friendship ended. And there are questions that they do need to ask children and teenagers. You know, what's going on? Like, do you have a feeling of feeling off? Do you feel mentally exhausted? Do you feel emotionally drained? Just to see what their child and their teenager says.
But come on, Natalie, teenagers, I'm fine. So what are some other probing questions that parents can ask their teenagers to get to the real root of the problem?
Well, a lot of times people think that you're just sad and need to be cheered up. So if a teenager responds with, I'm fine, just, you know, it's whatever, just leave me be, I'm okay, then continue. You don't have to continue the line of questioning then and there, but continue to observe them. Continue to say, hey, you know, why don't we go for ice cream? Or you used to like playing this video game. What's going on with it now? Is there something different? Did something happen with the game? You know, asking the more practical questions. Teenagers really like a lot of yes or no questions, but trying to get a feel if there's something else that's going on in the background. Sometimes when you come at people directly with emotions, they'll meet you with, that's too much right now. I don't want to talk about that. If you say, hey, you used to love my scrambled eggs, you're not eating them anymore. Anything going on? A different way I need to prepare them? And then see what their reaction is. Teenagers, when they feel like they're being listened to, they will typically start to express in their own way at their own time.
We covered quite a bit with those couple of questions. Let's take a short break. I want to ask you about the different types of depression.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Listen, you're my friend.
I noticed you haven't really been yourself recently.
Yeah, I feel like something's up.
How are you?
Are you okay?
Is there anything you want to talk about?
I just want to know how you're feeling.
And listen, even if you don't know what to say, I'm here to talk.
No matter what you're going through,
I just want you to know I'm here.
I've got your back.
when you want to talk, I'm here.
Hi, welcome back to Betty. I'm your host, Cynthia Thompson. I'm here with Natalie, and we're talking about depression. Now, Natalie, before we went on break, I said there are different types of depression. Can you give us just a few of them?
Sure. There's the most common, which is major depressive disorder. So when people talk about being clinically depressed, this is what most people think about. It's periods, episodes of marked hopelessness or irritability or edginess or feeling not necessarily sad, but indifferent to things that are going on. A lot of times people describe it as walking through a fog. Everything is gray. There are no colors. There's also bipolar disorder, which used to be called manic depressive disorder. And the name was changed to really describe the highs and the lows people have. So with bipolar disorder, the highs are high. They're extremely talkative. You'll have people that spend money like it's water. They talk to everyone. They feel really up. They feel really productive. And then the lows hit, and the lows are very low. So they fall into a depressive episode that lasts an extended period of time, and it becomes a cycle. There's also postpartum depression. When women have babies, and for a short period of time, some women feel depressed. They feel exhausted. They feel hopeless. They have fears about possibly harming their child. Generally, with medication and therapy, those symptoms subside.
So what causes that? Because they've already given birth? Is that why?
Sometimes it's hormonal. Sometimes women who have been diagnosed with depression before they were pregnant will experience episodes of postpartum depression after they have the baby. There's also PMDD, which is a premenstrual type of depression. So this is something that really gets underdiagnosed a lot of times because women feel like they're just having PMS symptoms. You know, they're like, okay, I'm moody and aggravated, and that's fine, along with physical symptoms from PMS. But PMDD is more severe. So you will have people who really feel sometimes enraged. They are extremely irritable. They do not want to speak to people. They isolate, and the lows are very low. They feel like they're at a low point. This goes away once their period ends. And with PMDD, it's helpful because it sometimes mimics bipolar disorder. So sometimes they'll be underdiagnosed or misdiagnosed. So it's always helpful when I have a woman come in and she's describing some of these symptoms, I have her start tracking her period and the symptoms that she has. And then we start to see a pattern of moods before the period. That's not just PMS symptoms. So those are some of the more common ones that people talk about. Also, what we're dealing with now with some people, it's the winter. So seasonal affective disorder. So sad. And people who can't take some of the gloomy days and the cold weather. Yes, they do a lot of light therapy as well. There are all kinds of lights you can buy on Amazon that really give people a type of pick-me-up.
I know you mentioned some types of depression just for women. Are there any just for men?
No, there are none that are specific to men, but postpartum depression and PMDD definitely specific to women.
So men don't experience the postpartum too? You know, they see the belly getting big and rubbing the belly, and when the baby's here, they don't get sad?
Sometimes they can empathize
Okay.
with their significant other who's going through postpartum depression.
Okay.
And with depression, sometimes someone's mood can drag people down what I call a rabbit hole, but they are not clinically depressed. Their significant other is.
Well, I learned something today. I didn't know that. I thought maybe men got depressed during that time period too, after the baby is here, but I guess they really don't. It's a different kind. It's something else, right?
Sometimes it's just a transition. Sometimes it's the mounting bills in the household for the new baby. Sometimes that just makes people depressed. It's situational depression.
So, are there any illnesses that happen whenever you become depressed? I think you covered that, like don't eat, mouth dry. Are there any other things?
Well, one thing that I don't think people realize sometimes too is that there are certain health conditions that will exacerbate depression. So for instance, diabetics have a higher rate of depression.
Oh my goodness, I did not know that.
People who have heart issues generally have a higher rate of anxiety. So when people come in, generally I find out as well if they've had a physical done to see if there are any underlying medical conditions that can contribute to their depression or their anxiety that they're having. When you're not eating, when you're not sleeping well, that of course can cause a variety of ailments. You know, you have some people that, you know, are malnourished. They don't even know it because they're like, okay, well, I stopped eating for like a month, just off and on, you know, and they don't realize that they're also doing damage to their body. But at that moment, they also don't care. Because one thing depression does is take away people's caring of things that are happening on a day-by-day basis. They want to feel something, they're just not able to feel something in the moment.
So, you've given us a lot of information here. What are some of the ways that you can treat depression? I'm sure there's a laundry list of them. What are the ones that you like to use? Maybe I should ask that.
I love talk therapy first and foremost. I think that being able to see a therapist, doing cognitive behavioral therapy, doing dialectical behavior therapy, these are
cognitive what?
Cognitive behavioral.
So what is that?
So with cognitive behavioral, you are trying to reframe your perspective on things, seeing the glass half full instead of half empty.
Oh, okay.
So it is very helpful for people with depression because what depression does is take away, again, the light and the colors. And cognitive behavioral therapy can help people start to feel again, start to think about pleasurable activities they engaged in before that they're not doing now. One of the things that therapy can do is give them hope. Hopelessness is a very serious issue for people with depression. It can lead to suicidal ideations. So one thing that you want to do is when people are in a depressive episode, and most people who have depression know within at least a couple hours that they're in a depressive episode. So what you can do is make sure that you have a support network. And I always like to have people do a depression plan so that when they are depressed, they know how to tell people how to help them. Because one thing that people assume is that, hey, you're depressed, let's watch some funny YouTube videos, or let me tell you a joke, and that's going to make you feel better.
No.
And it's a chemical imbalance. It's the way their brain is wired during a depressive episode, that it's not just, hey, cheer up, you're going to be okay. It's, all right, I have to ease myself back into the feelings again. But talk therapy is great for depression. Medication can work well for depression. There are a variety of antidepressants out there. When people go to their doctors, I always tell them that they might have to use a combination of medications in order to help them through the depressive episode. And they also really need to be in communication with their doctors about what side effects they're having and what's working, what's not. There's some that just don't react well with people. It can make their depressive episodes worse.
Really?
And generally, you need to have the medication in your system for about 2 weeks or more in order to really feel the positive effects of the medication.
And you also need to go and see a therapist too, correct?
Correct.
While
So
you're on medication?
medication and therapy combined are great for depression. Also, things like exercise, making sure that you are gradually picking up again those pleasurable activities and trying not to isolate yourself during that time. It can be very difficult, but reaching out to people and making sure they know what you need is always going to be a benefit.
Wow. So that was the cognitive. What was the other one you were about to share with us?
Dialectical behavior therapy.
Okay, that's a very long word. What does that
So
mean?
it's commonly called, of course, DBT. And basically, it combines mindfulness, which is a really big thing that everybody's talking about now. But that's basically meditation, making sure you are realizing what's going on with your body. Basically being grounded and saying, okay, so for instance, there are 5 things in this room I can see. There are 4 things I can touch. There are 3 things I can smell. And what happens when people are depressed, there is a cognitive dissonance between what's reality and what's not. A lot of times people will describe it as having an out-of-body experience. Like, yeah, that's me on the couch, but I'm not feeling this. So with DBT, with mindfulness, with distress intolerance, you're learning to bring yourself back in and really process how your body's feeling, what you're observing, what you're thinking.
Okay. Are there any other types of treatments that you use?
I like CBT and DBT and definitely, knowing whether my client's on medication or not and being able to help navigate that for them.
So with that, let's take another short break. When we come
Okay.
back, we're going to talk some more about this.
Oh, awesome.
Oh, sweetie. Okay, you know what? Let's take off his sweatshirt. Get rid of pictures of him. You don't have to look at him. Goodbye, Dave.
Mom, you don't understand. He's tagged in like 400 of my posts.
I can cut out tags.
No, that's not how it works.
What is a tag?
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care would love to share their first with you.
Hi, and welcome back to Betty. I'm your host, Cynthia Thompson. I'm here with Natalie, and we're talking about how people should treat depression if they ever get to that state. Natalie, you've shared a lot of information with us. I want to talk about suicide now because suicide I think it's going up. I don't know for sure, is it?
The rate of suicide among children younger than 12 is definitely increasing.
Oh, no. So what are some signs of a person, if I had a friend, that I will look for to see if maybe they were suicidal?
So the issue with suicidal clients and people in general is that there are typically no signs.
Oh, really?
So this is why when someone completes suicide, that family members and friends are really caught off guard. Now, some people will actually come out and say, they have some keywords. They may say everything feels helpless or hopeless, or I feel worthless, or I can't see my way out of this pain. But everybody doesn't do that. So I tell people that when someone's depressed and you think there's something going on, to definitely reach out and continue to reach out. People who are clinically depressed will sometimes try their best to make sure that no one knows what's going on. They want to isolate themselves. They don't want to be a burden to others. They don't want to feel like, okay, I'm making you responsible for my emotions right now. But like I tell clients who are depressed or anybody who knows someone who's depressed, just let the person know that you're here to help. You want to help. And if they say, hey, I'm suicidal, first thing you do is call 911 and say, I have someone here who says they're suicidal. I need help. And they're trained to help guide you through the process.
Oh, so don't call the suicide hotline?
You can call.
Is it both the same?
It's not the same.
Oh.
You can call the suicide hotline as well. Depending on where the person is and their plan for suicide, they'll direct you back to 911.
Oh, really?
So I always have people call 911 first to say, I do need help navigating the situation. They don't always come out because you call 911. They will try to help guide you as best they can before any other action. A lot of times people are concerned, like, is that just a frivolous call, or are they going to come running out? And it's not like that.
I think that would scare me if I was with someone at that point and the police show up with the lights blaring, like, oh my God, the neighbors are going to know what's going on.
Right. But the suicide hotline, 911, also your local behavioral health facility here in Charlotte. The most well-known one for us is on Billingsley Road. So they have a psychiatric ER that people can call as well.
So you had mentioned that suicide has gone up for kids younger than 12. Why is that?
Well,
why do you think that is?
No one really knows for sure. There have been a lot of theories out there about the influence of social media with young children. I'm not sure if you heard about it this week. There's a figure called Momo that is popping up in popular children's videos on YouTube. So a child can start playing an innocent video on YouTube, and it's a bug-eyed woman who basically shows up with a creepy smile telling children to harm themselves. So there are a lot of YouTube videos in the past week or so that have been flagged for trying to incite harm, self-harm with children. So there have been things like a year or so ago, the Blue Whale Challenge, where children had, a 30-day challenge, and each day they do something to harm themselves.
What?
And at the end of the 30 days, they're supposed to kill themselves. So, what some people are finding is that social media is very influential and persuasive when it comes to children, and that a lot of times kids are not understanding this is permanent. So they're like, okay, well, everybody's doing this challenge. It's just another game until it's not. And there has been a big crackdown on the messages that children are getting about suicide, and more counselors in the school. CMS has hired a ton of counselors in order to make sure that children have proper coping skills and that they're picking up on things that sometimes parents are not able to. So those are my opinions on what might be happening to cause this increase in childhood suicide.
So tell me, in your opinion, do you think that television show, the suicide thing, is on Netflix? I don't remember the name of it.
Is it the 13 Reasons Why?
Yes, yes.
So there have been some schools that have banned conversations in classrooms about 13 Reasons Why. I think it's important for children to understand what suicide is and that it exists. Because, of course, with kids, the more you try to hide something from them,
the more they want to see it.
The more they go towards the light. Well, what is this? I can Google this and find out what it is. I think the conversation needs to be had with parents and with schools alike about what's age appropriate when talking to students about suicide, but not trying to cover it up as a shameful hush-hush type of thing, because unfortunately for some children, that just makes it all the more interesting to them.
Yeah, they gravitate towards it. So I wanted to ask you, since we're kind of talking about social media, do you think that it plays a larger role in our being depressed, our meaning people being depressed, because you don't have that contact with another real person?
Well, I think it's twofold. I think it's the lack of contact with people offline, and I also think it's what's being portrayed by people online. as I tell clients all the time, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, it's the person's best representative. They're putting out what they would like for you to know
Yeah.
about them, what they want you to think about them.
And who has time for all that stuff?
Exactly. So, but you have people that spend all day on social media and they never feel like they measure up. One of the things that I have found is that people are redefining their definition of success based on their comparison with others on social media. How many likes does this person have?
Yeah.
You know, did they get a bunch of comments? You know, who viewed my story? And when you're not interacting with people offline, then online becomes your world. It becomes the definition of you. And it is
Wow.
definitely playing a role in people becoming more depressed because they have nothing to compare themselves. They're not getting out and actually seeing that, okay, great, everybody's not jet setting around the world, you know, in designer clothing all day. That, okay, so people are getting up and they're going to work. And this
Wow.
is just how the day is today.
With that said, we're going to take a short break, and I have one more question for you because we're almost out of time.
Oh, no problem.
Hi, welcome back to Betty. I'm your host, Cynthia Thompson. I'm here with Natalie, and we're talking about depression, which is something that a lot of people don't like talking about, but it's something that we need to talk about. Now, Natalie, you shared a lot of information with us today. So tell me, what do you think the future treatments for depression is going to be on down the road? Do you think it'll still be to continue the talking and medication?
I think talk therapy and medication will continue to be the first line of treatment for depression. It's going to be interesting to see how in the future we treat depression in children and teenagers. There's been a lot of back and forth about antidepressants that can actually, you know, increase the feelings of suicide in teenagers and how to adequately balance that. I think that I'm really, really excited to see actually what the schools are doing and what they'll continue to do in the treatment of depression. For a long time, school counselors were basically just scheduling, you know, students doing testing, and they weren't doing a lot of counseling. But now I think the school districts across the country are becoming more aware that students need a safe place to land. It can't be, I went to the school counselor and they wrote me something and that was it. They really do need someone who's going to listen.
And one last thing, Natalie, what is your website or email address, just in case my viewers have more questions for you?
My website address is cltwellbeing.com. And my email address is
The same thing.
cltwellbeing@gmail.com, and my number is 704-296-8372.
Thank you so much for coming on my show. You know, I learned a lot too. And I want to thank each and every one of you for watching my show, A Better You, here on Public Access 21 every Wednesday night at 6 p.m.
Thank you. You are so
much.
welcome. You are so welcome.